Welcome to the CrowdCrux crowdfunding podcast, where we talk about everything you need to know to run a killer crowdfunding campaign. My name's Sal Brigman, and thank you for listening. If you guys have any questions, comments, you'd like to reach out, you can always hit me up on Twitter. My handle's at sbrigman, SBRIGGMAN.
Hey guys, this is episode number 5 of the CrowdCrux crowdfunding podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Instead of having a guest on today, I'm going to be speaking to you directly. And we're going to be covering the top 5 mistakes that I'll see that Kickstarter creators tend to experience when they're launching their project. And these are mistakes that I've sort of gathered over the past 2 years helping creators. Just in this past year alone, I've helped over 200,000 entrepreneurs, inventors through my blog, forum, webinars we've done, live in-person events, my ebook, etc. And I keep seeing the same mistakes coming up time and time again. So hopefully we can help prevent some of these. But I would like to dive right in. The first mistake I see is also very common in the startup world, and it's this mentality that of build it and they will come. Build it and they will come. Usually that refers to a product. In this case, it's going to be putting a project up there on Kickstarter. I think there's a bit of that mentality because we see all of these projects raising, thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there's this very common perception that there are people out there just waiting to back projects and are going to throw money at you if you have the right idea or you have a good pitch video. And that might be partially true, but as any creator that I've interviewed will tell you, a good part of it comes also from marketing and from correct networking with friends and family to begin to get those numbers up so that other people are even interested in your project. So I'd like to sort of cite I did this interview with Nick Romer, who ran the DaVinci Notebook Kickstarter campaign. And he raised a modest amount. They had a $4,000 fundraising goal, raised about $17K, and he's also run 2 other successful Kickstarter campaigns. And what I took away from speaking with him was, although there is a backer community on Kickstarter, you can look at the numbers. I think now it's around 2 million people have backed more than one Kickstarter campaign. You really need to put in the work to get the word out to whether if it's a game campaign, interested gamers through forums, through social networking, building up your social profiles in anticipation of launching your Kickstarter, through getting the word out through PR. A lot of these gamers will discover new and interesting Kickstarter projects through either a social bookmarking site like Reddit or a popular blog that they're reading. So although there is a little bit of a backer community on Kickstarter, I think the overwhelming majority of campaigns will really have to put in the effort to let people know about the opportunity. So that's the first common mistake I see, is throwing up a page and thinking that people are just going to discover you. I've seen it happen, but it's very, very rare. It's not something that you can definitely count on. Then that goes into my next mistake. I think at least the people that discover my blog, a lot of people will have already launched a Kickstarter and maybe say halfway through it or the week after, they then begin to look up ways to promote it and come asking me for advice. And that's really the worst time that you can begin to promote your campaign, just because, going back to my interview with Nick, he referred to the first 3 days as sort of the honeymoon period of your Kickstarter campaign. It's the easiest time you're going to have in which you can get the word out to backers on the platform, because people are going to be looking through the recently launched pages, and if you are getting some traction from pledges from friends and family, your project is going to start getting more traction. People that come to it, that have seen it in the recently launched section will see that other people are pledging. They're more likely to read or watch her video, and it's probably the best time, I would say. The first 3 days and towards the end of the campaign when it's closing are the best times to attract backers from Kickstarter itself. In addition, that sort of time period, every single rapidly funded Kickstarter that we've done, that we featured on our site, has raised their funds within the first week, which sounds crazy. You're supposed to set 30 days, and these people are raising and hitting their goal within the first week. But if you are trying to raise, be one of those extremely successful campaigns, that's the mark that you need to hit. So you need to think that I would have the mentality almost that the first week is crucial, that those 7 days are all you have to raise money, and trying to get as many of your friends to pledge during that period, to do as much PR outreach and as much promotion as you can. Because most, but not all campaigns, will see the majority of their growth in the first 7 days, and I'd say the last 3 days or so. There are some campaigns that will have more of a linear pledge growth, but it's not as much as the norm in my experience. So the second mistake, ignoring the preparation for the first 7 days of your project. So the early launch period is crucial. If you can line up press to hit during that time frame, that's a really good idea, guys. And one way that I found to be very effective with starting to get those pledges in the early launch phase is to use limited quantity or early bird rewards and heavily discount them. I'm talking about off these rewards, you're essentially making no profit, but that's just to get people in the door so that they see others are interested in the project. They're likely to watch the video now, and if they do pledge, then they're going to be pledging at the regular tiers. So early bird rewards are another way to get people in the door in that early launch period. The third mistake that I see, and this is only a mistake if you have a successful campaign, that is poor budgeting. So most people, when they think of running a crowdfunding campaign, let's just say they raise, $100,000, it seems like you'd be celebrating and you might go to the tropical island and sip margaritas or something like that. But that's the last thing that you're going to be doing once you're done. You have to fulfill the rewards that you've promised your backers. And some of your backers might not even come all from your local country. They might be international. When you have a lot of backers, there's, let's say you have 25 backers. If you fail to calculate in one component of reward fulfillment costs, it's not going to be that big of a deal. But if you have, say, 1,000 backers or even 200 or more, any small mistake you make in terms of costs for shipping or for manufacturing the rewards is going to be compounded, and it's going to really erode your margins very quickly. I've spoken with people who have actually had to put up money after the Kickstarter because they didn't estimate costs correctly. It's not a situation you want to be in, believe me. So poor budgeting is another area that I see in terms of common mistakes. Now, also with budgeting, if you are expecting to have any kind of profit from your Kickstarter, in my research, most creators, if they're doing a design or a gaming project, are going to see around 5 to 10% profit margin after fulfilling all of their rewards. That can easily be eaten up if you make a mistake, but that profit margin, depending on the pledges that you've received, is subject to taxation. And I would definitely consult an attorney or at least look up your state and country's tax laws there. But typically, if someone pledges $30, say, for a watch, and you deliver that watch, any profit you've made off that reward tier would be considered taxable. If they pledged, say, $50 for a pin or a sticker or something like that, that would be considered a gift, at least from what I've researched in the United States, because the value compared with the price paid is it's not equitable. nowhere near on that level. And for people that don't elect to choose a reward, those would also be considered donations from my research. But I would highly recommend consulting a tax attorney and making sure you've done your homework on the budgeting aspect. The fourth mistake that I've seen is failure to study industry examples. And I think this is because people get really excited. A Kickstarter has the ability to launch your dream and possibly make that side project you've been working on into your full-time gig. It's really exciting. And you don't want to read about all these other campaigns that are similar to yours or that might have competing products or anything like that. It can be incite a little bit of fear in you that maybe yours isn't distinguished enough or something like that. But you really need to nail down, I would make an Excel spreadsheet of 10 to 20 at the least similar projects to yours, usually in the same category, and get a feeling for, using kicktrack.com, how their pledges amassed over time and what rewards they were offering, what were the most popular rewards, what kind of comments were they getting on the project. You can use a tool like Google search and filter by time to see what media hits they got. You can use Twitter advanced search and plug in the name of the product over and specify the time or location to see what tweets and social messages people were posting about that project. And if you add a plus to their Kickstarter short link, like the symbol a plus, you'll also get a bit.ly breakdown of the stats in terms of traffic of who clicked their Kickstarter short link and locations of those clicks. So all of those research methods, and there are a few more I can direct you to on my site, will help you give an idea of what you can expect and the amount of effort that you're going to need to put in to get this thing off the ground. If you're doing a project in a category and you see similar projects haven't gotten off the ground at all, that's time to stop and think, why is that, and how can you make your project different? If nothing else, I would at least watch videos of successful Kickstarters in your category and look at the updates and see the kind of comments they generated, and just sort of get an idea how the other creators manage their campaigns. This is no different than if you're trying to be successful in some other area. You have to study the industry examples. Don't reinvent the wheel. The final Kickstarter mistake that I see is I'd sort of like to think of it as an analogy between constructing a rocket ship versus driving a car. So a rocket ship is extremely mathematical and calculated. You're going to be giving specific set of instructions for it to take off at this time, to begin burning, this engine at this time. When it exits orbit, it's going to break away, part of the rocket ship, and it's going to engage these other engines. It's very mathematical and calculated. And I think most people who want to launch a campaign tend to try and look for a formulaic way, like it should launch on this date, and you should be doing X, Y, Z. But in reality, I think launching a startup or a Kickstarter is very similar to driving a car. So when you're driving a car, you're not thinking about all the specific instructions that you're giving to that car as you go down the road to your destination. You're sort of feeling as you go, encountering potholes, having to swerve a little bit, and having to adjust the steering wheel, speed up, slow down. These are all things that you have to process in real time, and that if you run into traffic, say, you might need to alter the course of your journey. So I think that trial and error is something that's going to be invaluable to you when you're launching or running your Kickstarter campaign, and following the data and figuring out what it is you're doing right, what you need to improve on. And that's not going to be the same for every category. In my experience, say publishing projects, they heavily depend on their social network. I'd say at least 75% of funds are going to come from an author's social network and fans, and maybe 25% from traffic from PR or from social media or other interested parties. Whereas with a design project, that has a much more increased chance of being highly leveraged, where maybe only 20% of the pledges are coming from the individual social network, and the rest are people who are just looking for a cool new watch or wallet or whatever to support. So I think launching a project, you're going to need to approach it having a fair amount of trial and error, and being willing to have that sort of small buffer where you say, I don't necessarily know what medium is going to be most effective for my project, but I'm going to make it my job to figure it out by following the data and measuring the response of my marketing efforts. And sometimes, I've talked with creators who are really talented. They have a great product, or they have a great vision for what they're trying to do, and maybe they're not successful the first time around. And that's okay. I've talked with guys who have a failed Kickstarter campaign. Maybe they raise half of the funds necessary, and they get a few, maybe 50 backers. But then the next time around, they plan more carefully, they learn from the mistakes they made, and then they relaunch and are successful. Just the other day, I was talking to someone who had 2 failed Kickstarter campaigns, ended up being successful on the 3rd. And, that's just to underscore, that's what he said. It was a learning process. And I think that learning that you're going to do as you go into the preparation launch phase is going to carry over to your business in general. So you're going to need to know, when you're releasing new products, how to market them, how to get PR, how to interest people with copywriting, how to engage potential customers, how to do customer service like you're doing in the comment section with Kickstarter. All of these skills that you're putting into running and launching a campaign are going to be transferable. So it's really exciting. So I hope some of these common mistakes will shed some light on the process, and that you will be able to avoid them. If you have any questions, I'm going to also post this podcast on my blog, so you have a chance to leave a comment, or you can tweet to me at sbrigman, SBRIGGMAN, and I'll respond to you there. But thanks so much, guys, for listening. I hope this was helpful for your project, and I look forward to talking with you next time. Also, before I forget, please take a moment to rate this podcast on iTunes. I'd love any feedback you have. Thanks so much for taking the time, and I will see you next time.